Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Wheelhouse. I'm your host, Chris Wheeler. We've got two pretty amazing guests coming your way here in just a little bit, so stay tuned. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back with guest number one, Chris Blair from Worldwide Technology Raceway. Everybody, welcome back here to the Wheelhouse. I'm your host, Chris Wheeler, and joining me right now, my good buddy, Chris Blair, all the way from Worldwide Technology Raceway down there in St. Louis. Man, welcome. I'm glad you're here.
Hey, thanks. We, jumped through a few hoops here, borrowed a computer, and I was going to say, I'm using a borrowed computer. So if anything weird pops up on the screen, it's Mark Fournier. It's not me. All right.
So obviously, everybody's just kind of starting to get that idea in their head of going back to work. But here you are, man. You're in the office today. You've shaved. You've got a collar on. It's pretty impressive.
Yeah. The funny thing is, there was one day a couple weeks ago, I went into my dry cleaner and she said, "Yeah, I had 7 customers yesterday." And I said, "Really?" And she said, "Yeah, you're the only one that wasn't a police officer." And I'm like, "Really?" She said, "Yeah." She said, "I'm so happy to see you." And because no one's getting dressed to go anywhere, So, so I'm supporting the local dry cleaner, so they all know me now. So, but yeah, that was the thing. Like I was saying, earlier, I just I didn't want to get into that trap where I wasn't going in, and I deem myself essential when it comes to the racetrack and keep an eye on things. I'm a glorified security guard part of the time here too, So been coming in about 6 days a week, working normal shifts. I did push it. I'm sleeping in a little bit. I get to the office at 10 in the morning and usually leaving 6 or 6:30 at night. So I'm enjoying the mornings a little better than I used to. So
we posted yesterday on the Swindell SpeedLab Facebook page pictures of our new office down in Mooresville, North Carolina, and it says we're the hours, and it says 10-ish to there's no AM or PM associated with that either. It's just 10-ish.
Exactly.
But I think that a lot of people have learned a lot about business and how businesses are going to operate moving forward during this pandemic, especially when it comes to the work from home angle. You look at companies that say rent, thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars of office space that have not lost a step here during this. Are they going to continue to do that? So another key that I think I've seen is people thinking, just like yourself, you've got a pretty impressive staff there. I like going to St. Louis. Somebody who lives in Scottsdale might not like living in St. Louis. So sometimes it can be difficult to recruit, the best person for a job into the Midwest market. But with opportunities like what we've all gone through here in the last couple of months, it's kind of opened a lot of people's eyes to say, well, do they have to live here?
Yeah. That's one of those questions that's debatable. Our friends over at Worldwide Technology, they have a workspace downtown, 5 minutes from here, downtown St. Louis. It's an old warehouse they've converted into a workspace. And the majority of the employees, when they are there, it's just so that they can get together to collaborate. This is before the COVID situation. But the majority of their employees work from home. They only go there for team meetings and when they're actually working on a specific project. Most of the time they're working from home, and so they save a tremendous amount of money by that business model. Now, the one thing I look at when it comes to racetracks and things of that nature is I feel like it's more of a personal industry. There's a lot of times where people have to roll up their sleeves. Our people here, our sales guys, they're hanging banners. There's a lot of those types of things where if we were a big, massive corporate entity, then yeah, maybe you could do the work from home. But I feel like there's that personal piece that you have to, stay engaged with the venue, because the last thing you want is a guy who does work from home showing up on race weekend and not knowing his or her way around the racetrack. So I'm still not completely sold on the work from home. So I know one of our sales guys, he's been having a virtual happy hour every Friday afternoon, and I said, well, if you're going to drink beer on the job, you need to bring it to work, and let's do it the right way. So. But the good thing is, well, at least now this age where we are able to keep doing some things. It'd be very helpful if we had some guidance from some lawmakers as to what the true next steps are, so we can say that yes, we're going to start with a drag race or a road course event on June 1st, if we even knew that we could do that. But it's like everything's always changing, and it's really frustrating for us right now.
No, I get it. We've got a pretty healthy schedule. I know I do, between IndyCar and IMSA, 24-hour Le Mans. Not to mention the big dirt races, and then stuff that's local here to Central Indiana. That I want to be at Kokomo on a Sunday night. Dang it! And right now, this is the longest I've been home.
Yeah,
since I can remember. I mean, all the way back to the age of about 7. So
yeah, that was the thing. It was funny. I was looking at it the other day, and because this is one of the first times in my life I've never had a flight scheduled. The last time I went this long without flying, it's been 2 months for me. I just got back from the Phoenix NASCAR event, was getting ready to head to St. Pete when I got the call that I needed to cancel. So we're looking at 2 months. And the last time I'd gone that long without flying, I believe, was 1995, right before I went to work for Pace Motorsports, which is now Feld, doing Supercross. And then the last time I went this long without staying in a hotel, I think I was like 15 or 16 years old, going 2 months without staying in a hotel.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank God that last year I've got upgraded to Marriott Silver Elite Lifetime, because I would be really pissed off this year if I didn't get my points and had to go all the way back to start all over. That was one of my biggest concerns through all this.
I've been paying attention to my points accounts myself, and the notifications they send. They keep extending. Hey, you don't need to worry about anything for the next 14 months. We're not going to knock you down. And I'm like, I just made Intercontinental Elite with IHG. I don't want to lose this.
Yeah, other people are all concerned about catching something and getting sick, and we're concerned about losing our points. That shows you how sick we are.
Yeah. No, people out there, and at least for me, they're talking about wearing a mask to the grocery store. Well, first off, I don't go to the grocery store.
Yeah.
All these things that people are exploring now, like food delivery and alcohol delivery. These are normal, essential things in my everyday life.
Exactly.
Like, I've been social distancing when I'm not at a racetrack for 10 years.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's a few of the things I was pointing out. There's some people that I would deal with, and some family members, that it's not affecting them one damn bit, because they never leave the house. If they do, they've been placing their grocery orders and just drive up and get stuff thrown in the back. So for some people, it's not that big of a deal. But for those of us who are used to getting out and doing things and want to hear race cars running. I mean, I went up to Macon, Illinois on Saturday. Bob Sargent was putting a test together, and it was something he was doing to show the state of Illinois how we could do some social distancing and operate a racetrack. And I went up there and volunteered to help, just because it had been that long since I'd heard a race car, and got to play with the dirt a little bit. So that was, to me, it was kind of a relief, because, okay, maybe this is the signal that things are starting to turn here a little bit. And luckily for us, Pevely, I-55 Speedway over here in Pevely, Missouri, about 30 minutes from our track, they're going to have a race this Saturday, a dirt late model show. And then Farmington, Missouri, they're going to be running sprint cars on Saturday. And they've had such an interest, they're actually going to do 2 shows in one day. So they're going to run 3 classes. I think starting at 1 o'clock, they're going to kick them out of the pits. Then the next group's going to come rolling in. They have a 410 sprint feature that night. So, and it's not that far from here. From the racetrack, it's maybe 45, 50 minutes. So, that's a good thing. At least we have a neighboring state that has a governor who's willing to use some normal thinking. And we'll see.
I like Farmington. It's a cool little joint. I've been there a few times.
It's a great racetrack. So, and that's one of the things, we reached out to them a few weeks ago, and I told them, it looks like you guys are going to get to open before us. So when it becomes official and you need help, we're going to be doing some email blasts to help both them and the event at Pevely. But Pevely sold out in one afternoon. They only were able to sell 700 tickets, and they sold 300 tickets in 5 minutes.
Wow.
Sell. And this is just to their basic email database. They didn't do any advertising, no social. And they sold it out in an afternoon, and now they're just pushing the pay-per-view. So we'll see how it goes.
Well, you kind of touched on it there for a minute. I mean, you've had a career that's led you to this point with some pretty exciting people, right? Pace, which is now Feld, right? Which is Supercross, Monster Jam, etc. Then you went to the NHRA.
Mm-hmm.
From NHRA over to Las Vegas to the Speedway out there, and then Curtis brings you back to the heartland, closer to school where you went down there in Kentucky. And I mean, what are some of the keys that you've been able to learn across the board from that first day when you walked into the Pace or Feld offices that really continue today?
Well, for me, really, I started even before that in 1988 when I was still in high school. I started writing for a local newspaper, just covering racing, because I just wanted to try to find a way I could get a free pit pass. That's what I was looking for, because pit pass back then was about $15, and I was trying to save every nickel that I could. So I started covering stuff for the local newspaper, then started writing for Kentucky Racing News, and then from there I did some work for Dick Bergeron at Stock Car Magazine, and it just kind of went from there. Then the opportunity to start promoting came up in 1990. So I started promoting some dirt track stuff there in Kentucky, mainly special events, and so that's all I've ever done is been involved in the promotion and operations of racing. So I like to tell everybody I never really had a real job my whole life. The great thing about this that I've noticed is the number of people that crosses over. You wouldn't think that because you think everything's kind of in its own segmented piece, but a lot of people that I dealt with on Supercross stuff in 95, 96 are people that I've been dealing with in IndyCar stuff and in NHRA drag racing. There's so much that crosses over in the industry. So that's one of the things some people may claim that I can be a real pain in the ass sometimes and difficult to work with. But, the one thing is, at least, it's important. I always tell the other people coming up, don't burn any bridges, because this is such a small industry when it really boils down to it, that you need to make sure that you maintain your friends all across the board. And, that's been one of the key pieces that I always look at is, everything comes around and goes around, and, the way you keep running into people. And, I got there at Pace, and at that point I was primarily just the dirt track guy, but that broadened, opened up so many things. The first day I went into work at Pace, the guy who met me at the desk when I walked in and said, "Hey, you're the new guy," is Glenn Cromwell, who's the president of NHRA. And Glenn was there working in the marketing department. And I went in operations, eventually became the director of business development. Glenn moved over, and he's focused primarily on marketing. And shortly before he left to go work for NHRA, the two of us teamed up, and we had a streak of 5 weeks in a row where we sold out every single show that we were doing, from events at Georgia Dome in Atlanta to smaller arena shows in Charlotte. We were just killing it that year. That was in '97, and Glenn took off and went over to NHRA to become the Division 7 director. And he gave me a call, and he said, "Hey, there's going to be an opening in Seattle out here for NHRA, and it's a heck of a deal. It's a great opportunity." So I started talking to Gene Bergstrom, who was the boss there at the time, and then met with Graham Light, met with Dallas Gardner, and a few months later, I was living in Silverdale, Washington, just across the way from Seattle, and was in charge of all drag racing for 3 Canadian provinces and 4 or 5 U.S. states. So hopped in, and it worked. And the whole thing, it always kind of steamrolls, and it's a networking thing. A few years later, I get a call from Roger Slack, who's now over at Eldora. And he says, "Man," he said, "I don't know if you have an interest, but Las Vegas Motor Speedway, they've built a drag strip there, and nobody knows how to run it." And he said, "You know how to run a drag strip." He said, "But here's the other piece is they have a dirt track there also, and they need help with the dirt track." And Chris Powell, who was the president of Vegas, asked Roger, he said, "If I could find one guy who knew something about drag racing and just a little bit of something about dirt racing, I'd hire him on the spot." And Roger said, "Well, here's the phone number." Got her a call. And so a few days later, I was flying down to Vegas, and then next thing you know, I was there, and was there for 11 seasons. And it was a heck of a run because, and again, it was one of those things where crossing paths with so many people. My phone just rang a second ago. It was Kevin Miller from USAC. I knew Kevin when he was working for Mopar over on the drag racing side. And then when he went to USAC, we were doing some races. And again, it just keeps crossing paths all over the place. And then to get here at this place, it was kind of funny. We were having an NHRA track operators meeting in Newport Beach. It was in 2011. Curtis was just thinking about taking on this project. The track had already been closed, and we ended up at the same table together in Newport. And Lex Dudas, who used to be at IRP years ago and was at Maple Grove, he told Curtis, he said, "You need to talk to Blair." He said, "There might be an opportunity there." So we kind of hit it off and started talking. And about the middle part of 2012, I kind of saw where the direction was going with advancing in the other company that I was working for. There was a track that I'd wanted to go run, and I was pretty much stuck. I knew I was going to be stuck at Vegas forever. And at that time, my wife is from Northern Illinois, and her mom was going through some health issues with cancer. My parents were down in Kentucky. From here at this racetrack, we're basically 6 hours from where my parents lived and 5 hours from her parents. So it just made sense that this is the place to come to. And after meeting Curtis and getting to know him and just what a nice guy he was, and knowing that it wasn't a corporate racetrack, that's the thing I wanted to get back to, is where it was more about real racing and less about shareholders and, making sure that you're always meeting the goals of what, Wall Street expectations were. And that was, it was the right place, the right time on many occasions. I've been lucky to be where I needed to be at the right point. So just worked out.
And since then, though, I mean, it's not just stopped there. You just didn't get to show up. I mean, you guys have put in the work. You have the NASCAR Truck Series now. Obviously, you've got the NHRA. You've got the IndyCar Series coming through. You guys have a karting facility inside the oval. You've got a drag strip that probably operates more frequently in a normal time than most drag strips in the Midwest. You guys have now acquired a golf course, which is next door, which is going to be phenomenal. But it circles back to see the growth of the facility since you and Curtis have kind of buckled down and really put the effort forward. I mean, the awards are nice at the PRI show, all the accolades, but there's a few things that stand out. One for me is my first trip to Gateway was the inaugural IndyCar race there, Champ Car race there. Mm-hmm. They rushed this thing so quickly, the ground wasn't even settled. Yeah. Like, it was mushy. There was no grass. Nobody knew what the heck we were getting into, but it had some pretty aggressive banking. And for an IndyCar, and we were hauling ass into turns 1 and 2, and it was cool. Yeah. Circle that back around all these years later, we go back with IndyCar for the first time, and this night was a little bit of both worlds collided, good, and I'm like, "What? Are you serious?" So the first one it was a little chilly, got a little cool that evening.
Yeah, in August, unbelievable. Yeah.
I mean, we're doing drivers to your cars, and I look outside from the spotter stand, which, by the way, still waiting on an elevator, and I see cars as far as the eye.
You look like you need an elevator, by the way. So.
As far as the eye can see, I can see cars.
Yep.
And they're just pouring in by the truckloads. Mm-hmm. I remember some point, the halfway point of the race, somebody had sent me a text saying, "I think they're out of beer." Yeah. The walk-up crowd that night for an IndyCar event might be one of the biggest that I've ever been a part of.
Yeah. It was kind of funny. We had what we expected, and we were very aggressive in our promotion. Our concession guy, we had sent him around to other races that year. He'd gone to St. Pete. He had gone to Iowa. And actually, he'd gone to Iowa the year before when it was still a night race. And we looked at that crowd for Iowa, which Iowa night race the year before was actually a pretty good crowd. And in his mind, he thought that was the numbers we needed to be looking for. And I said, well, we can always order more because we have NHRA a few weeks later. And that's where, really he got slammed. And it's one of those things. Ultimately, it falls back on being my responsibility. I should have kicked him in the ass a little bit harder to make sure that he was stocked up. But, he met the demand the following year. And, concessions have done great the last 2 years. That first year, though, hey, it's a good problem to have. It really, people were talking about just how big everything was. And then shortly after that first year, Curtis expanded the parking even more. We took the road that was on the backside of the property from being really a lane and a half to 2 lanes. It's now 3 lanes wide, and getting people in and getting people out, it's super easy. As you saw at last year's event, traffic was no issue. All the lots were emptied out in 45 minutes. The ones that first year, the part of the problem we had was all the people that showed up late, just trying to get them in as quick as we possibly could. We had to stick them in areas that we hadn't really intended on getting people parked, just because they were coming so hard that when it came time to leave, some of the people who had arrived late and hadn't parked properly, they're trying to get turned around. And then we had one guy who had a flat tire right in the middle of an area. And that was the big cluster that most people don't realize is here this guy breaks down. We had to get a wrecker over to drag him out of the way. Well, that's 20 minutes. And that was kind of the point where people were complaining. But all in all, most of the people who got here early, got in the good parking spots, they were out and gone. It was the last minute people who did all the bitching. So
I was parked in the infield.
Yeah.
Right. So I waited for the gate to open on the over off turn 2, and off we were. Yeah. In fact, I think my co-driver that night missed an exit about 10 miles out and started heading to 55 north maybe.
Yeah.
realize it about an hour later.
I've had that happen a few times. Yeah.
So what's next, man? I mean, you've got the golf course, you've got the big title sponsor with Worldwide Technology, the naming rights to the facility. You and Curtis and your entire team are just kicking ass, and you keep digging. What's next?
Well, we've been looking at a lot of options. One thing that we've been talking about since the day I got here was the member garage model with we've expanded our road course this year. Actually, we did it last year before Formula Drift. We're upgrading the infield road course, so it's a better experience, taking it from a 1.6 mile to a 2.0. And so we're expanding that out. One of our plans is to open a member garage country club type program here. And now having the golf course next door, it makes perfect sense that you can buy a membership that can get you golf and it gets you road course access and a storage space. That's one road that we're looking at as a possibility. We're still trying to get some other events in here. We haven't ruled out the possibility of adding other racetracks onto the property. We're just kind of keeping an eye on what's going on. Unfortunately, the situation that's going on right now is going to affect a lot of small tracks across the country. We have to see how what that does to the short track industry. But we've been looking at some other options there. One of the things I've even talked about is if it's feasible to even get back into the space of short asphalt ovals, and if there's a need for it. We have Lebanon, which is about 2 hours away from here. We're 3 hours from Indy. I'm a big fan of asphalt midgets. I've got one sitting in a garage down here that I would love to see running again on a regular basis. And this, I think, would be a perfect location if we had more short track asphalt ovals. I think we'd be in a perfect location. And I think the fans here would like it because you think about it, years ago, Larry Phillips, Rusty Wallace, Ken Schrader, all those guys, they were racing asphalt stock cars, and they were drivers from this immediate area, and it would be great to bring some of that back into this area.
Yeah. Well, I like it, man. I mean, you guys are down there, and you guys are dominating stuff, and it's definitely a highlight on my schedule. Every year.
Well, one of the things I like to emphasize is, and we did a video segment that we've been playing on social media here lately, and we played it for the tourism department and Chamber of Commerce here, is that it's a racetrack that's for race fans, that's run by race fans. And, I'm a lifelong race fan. Curtis, who's in, the next room, he's one of the only track operators I know in this industry that he's at the racetrack every single day. I mean, his office is next door. So if I come up with a harebrained idea, I go over there and it either gets a yes or gets shot down. And a lot of times he'll come over here with a crazy idea, but his crazy idea is he's the guy who writes the checks. So if he comes up with a crazy idea, it's his money, man. Do what you got to do. But we're right here on site. Curtis loves this place so much because when he was, just a small kid, maybe 10 or 11 years old, his dad brought him to this location to watch Evel Knievel do a motorcycle jump. And over in his office, he has that picture on the wall of Evel Knievel jumping some cars here at this location when it was under whatever the racetrack was years and years ago. And that kind of flipped the switch for him. He went from there into, he raced Indy Lights. He raced a lot of SCCA, Formula Atlantic. He ran some NASCAR Goody Dash series. I don't know if you remember those years ago, that series. He was getting ready to run some NASCAR truck stuff when his daughter came along. He actually ran Rolex in the sports car series and did some offshore powerboat stuff. And at one time, in one of the cannonballs across country, one of those high-speed runs, there was a group of like 20 or 30 of them. Curtis won that, one of those New York to California runs. And I think he destroyed a Mercedes AMG in the process. But, that shows you the kind of guy. I mean, he's definitely a car guy. He loves racing, and he has a great group of cars that he brings out here and plays on the racetrack with. So, I mean, he's all in. I mean, yesterday he was on our simulator out here in the lobby. My son Austin was here. Kenny Wallace was here. They were doing some testing for the Chili Bowl event this evening that's going to be on FS1. And Curtis hopped on. He wanted to see what it's all about because he keeps telling me he wants to go out and drive a midget somewhere, and I'm trying to keep him out of it. That's the last thing I want to see him playing with one of those things. Would be the end of us. But yeah, so that's the thing about it, and he wants it to be a great experience, and he wants, like he said that experience when his dad brought him here to the racetrack, that was a memory that has lasted a lifetime. He wants our racetrack to be the place that makes memories that last a lifetime for the next generation of race fans, or for the guy who may have felt that racing had passed him by, who's returning to the races for the first time in 30 or 40 years. He wants it to be a good experience all the way around, and we're always trying to upgrade and do it the best we can when we can.
Well, it's got my seal of approval. I know that. Last question. Same question. Everybody's going to get it as the show continues. You've got to pick one car, one track, and two drivers to go head versus head together. Who do you want to see and where?
Are we talking active drivers?
Anybody. It could be anybody, anywhere, any car.
Probably the greatest race I ever saw. And I've seen some good ones, but the one that just stands out to me, it will involve the same two drivers, so it's almost a tie. Haubstadt, Indiana, World of Outlaws, Steve Kinser, Sammy Swindell. I saw that matchup a lot of times back in the late 80s, early 90s, and I remember one time seeing Sammy get Steve right at the finish line coming off 4. Then I saw vice versa. And then, so that's one. The other is I'd love to see, in again the situation, but Sammy and Steve, Indiana State Fairgrounds. I believe it was May of '91. Sammy went into the last lap and had a big lead over Steve. Come up on a lap car, and Sammy wouldn't get off the rail. And this lap car, he wasn't getting off the rail either. And here comes Steve, about 160, 170 miles an hour on the outside, and coming off of 4. I mean, he made up damn near, a quarter mile on that last lap of the mile, and won the race, and the place went wild. It was nuts. And so again, anytime, to see Sammy and Steve, I mean, that's one of the things I'm most thankful for. I got to see those guys in their prime, and it didn't matter if it was Haubstadt, Indiana, which is one of the smallest tracks they run on, or the Indiana Fairgrounds. It was the biggest track. But, I don't know if it even matters what the racetrack was, but Sammy and Steve, to me, that was the best. It really was.
Well, I like it, man. Well, thank you so much for joining us here today. Everybody at home, this is going to be the end of the first half here of our show, so we're going to cut away for a little commercial break. But when we come back, we've got another exciting guest lined up just for your entertainment. So don't go anywhere. For Chris Wheeler, Chris Blair, first half of the Wheelhouse is now done. Welcome back, everybody, for the second half here of episode 2 of the Wheelhouse. I'm Chris Wheeler, and joining me right now, all the way from the Northeast. I don't know if it's cold right now, but it is most of your Otto Szebeni from iRacing, man. Welcome, and you're looking fresh.
Thanks, Chris. Looking fresh as you can be from being home for 2 months. Got the little goatee going. I got the hat covering the scruffy hair, but I'll be okay. We'll be semi-presentable for this.
Oh, man. So you guys have just been riding a wave of epic proportion. So many people, so many new interests in the service and on the platform provided by iRacing. Obviously, nobody ever wants a global pandemic, but damn it, if there's going to be one, and you're sitting in the catbird seat, I can't blame you.
It really played out well for us. Maybe not so much for the world, but for iRacing. But yeah, obviously it was an awful situation. It is an awful situation. Obviously, no one wishes this on anyone. But when everything stopped, iRacing was positioned to be able to kind of take the reins of motorsports, bring it into the virtual world, and let people have a little bit of enjoyment during this downtime where nothing is happening. We've been, as you know, Chris, we've been around since 2008 to the public. So what iRacing does isn't a new concept. We've been at this for over 10 years, and then previously for another 15 years through a different company. So we've been working on this technology, and it just so happened that it kind of played into our hands that, real world racers, teams, sponsors, everyone kind of said, hey, what are we going to do here for two plus months? And it was one of those things where someone's like, hey, what about this iRacing thing? And, it all came together very, very quickly, but it's really, a culmination of 10, 12, 14 plus years.
Well, I think part of the success to this whole thing these last few months has been Myers wasn't allowed to go on vacation anywhere.
Yes, and he does enjoy going on his little Caribbean trip right around end of March, and so that got pushed back. None of us were on vacation. Literally, if you ask anyone on the iRacing staff, we've worked more this past like 6 to 8 weeks than we have in the last couple of years. I mean, it was crunch time, and again, a great problem to have. Smallest violin. There's a lot of people that don't have jobs right now and are struggling. But again, we were positioned to where all these TV networks that had programming that now no longer had programming, all these sanctioning bodies that were like, okay, well, we have sponsors, we have these obligations that we really would rather not give checks back to. How do we create value for these organizations, these companies? iRacing was there. We had all the content, we had the cars, we had the tracks, and a lot of the pro racers were already on iRacing, whether they admitted it or not, right? And so when NASCAR said, you know what, let's do something here, it came to very, very, very quickly. Fox, has the first part of the year, right? And Fox was like, hey, we want content. NASCAR's like, hey, we got this platform. Hey, iRacing, meet Fox, meet NASCAR. And literally within a couple of days, we're like, all right, next weekend, we're racing, So all the politics, all the legal, all the normal BS that goes with putting together something like this, which takes normally months and months of attorneys drawing documents, stuff. Literally, this is all handshake stuff going, you know what? This is good for the industry. Let's just make it happen. And it was bigger than anyone had ever thought. I mean, we're hoping to get a decent audience with a decent group of drivers. Well, it turned out everyone in the Cup garage wanted to be a part of it. All the teams wanted to be a part of it because they wanted their sponsors to get recognition. And the races were, pulling 1 million people.
Yeah, no, the viewership was unreal.
What's great about that too, and NASCAR loves this, is that through the metrics that have been gathered, like 20+% of the people that were tuning in to these broadcasts actually hadn't tuned in to a real NASCAR race in this season. So, I mean, that's great on all fronts. That shows that iRacing is bringing fans, motorsport fans, to the NASCAR world. It's also showing that there's a lot of motorsport fans out there that maybe just don't know what iRacing was, were curious, came in. So, I mean, it was good for the whole ecosystem.
I've had a lot of fun, racing with guys. Like I have a group out of down in Florida that they all went and they signed up. And so a buddy of mine called me and goes, hey, Wheeler, man, we need your help. We don't know anything about it. We all have accounts. We all bought what we think's the right stuff. One guy drops, $4,000 at Phonetic. And the other guy finds a G25 on Craigslist.
Right, for $200, right?
Yeah, I mean, maybe like $150 in a chicken, right? And so I get them into Discord first, and I teach them how to use Discord so they can communicate.
Yeah.
And then, we take them very simple. I think we went and ran Legend Cars the first night.
Which isn't an easy car, by the way.
It's a great car.
Yeah.
And we just started at the very beginning, and we probably ran for 2 hours a day for 10 straight days, just the four of us. And then I invited a whole bunch of my friends.
Yeah.
Because they started kind of feeling it, like, hey, I got this. I said, okay, then let's see how you do in a pack. And I invite all my friends that do this full time, and well, let's just say that we don't have our nightly sessions anymore because now that they've seen how good it can be, so they're off just running everything and anything.
Yeah, right. But that's what people don't. I mean, the people that are motorsport fans or are, whatever, gamers or like technology, whatever, that don't understand what iRacing is. I mean, in short, it's an online, massively, online multiplayer game, right? It's the most realistic racing simulation you can get if you're the general public, right? And so it can be as fun or as serious as you want it to be, really. I mean, there's at the highest level, this, Chris, our World Championship Series now, especially on the NASCAR side, that pays out $312 grand.
Yeah.
I mean, that's serious at that point, right? So those guys are serious.
It's definitely big, and I think I know that on the SpeedLab side, we compete in the in the World of Outlaw sprint cars, World of Outlaw late models, and USAC non-wing sprint car stuff. James Eden just this week wrapped up his 3rd win in the World of Outlaw sprint cars. Blake Majulis, last year's late model champion. So we love it. Obviously, it's a big part of our brand and our culture as well. And it's another similar situation. Obviously we want to be at the racetrack, with the consumers and with our friends and our families. But right now we can't be. So what are we doing? Man, SpeedLab TV is pumping out live stream after live stream on the iRacing side. Kevin is racing more now than he has since I've known him.
Kevin is all over the place every time I see him. As a matter of fact, so tonight we got that FS1 Chili Bowl.
Yep.
So it's gonna be 1 hour. So at 7 p.m. He's gonna be running that Chili Bowl thing. So he's all over it.
I mean, it's going to be pretty cool to see Kevin hop into 39 at Tulsa again.
Right? Exactly.
Right? I mean, he's the only one to do it. What is it, 4 in a row? So
it'll be fun.
It'll definitely be a good time. But a lot of this is only possible because of the commitment to the vision and buying in. The service launched in about August of 2008.
Right.
And then where are you today? Guesstimation on global users, active users.
We have over 500,000 unique accounts, and that's in over 146 countries.
So the escalator on August of 2008 to right now, where we were May of 2020, that's a massive, massive projection.
Yeah, no, listen, it's been a nice steady growth, quite frankly. When we first launched this, we really didn't know exactly where it was going to go. I mean, is this a niche product? Is this where the only, the hardest core racer will care about, right? But what we realize is people like competition, regardless of what it is. And even if you're not a racer or a race fan, you hop into one of these races and it's about to go green. I mean, you tell me, Chris. I mean, your heart starts to pump, right? Your hands get a little sweaty, right?
That's just it. I mean, I go back to the Watkins Glen season opener with IndyCar this year for iRacing, right. And we did a live stream there on SpeedLab, and going back with the files and Tony Kanaan, just man, I'm nervous, and like TK's nervous, I play a lot of Call of Duty with Zach Veach, and Zach's like, man, I get more nervous at the start of these iRacing events,
right?
But then you also see what it's done for other people's careers, like Landon Castle. Right.
Sure.
Landon, in my opinion, was dealt a very shitty hand in his professional career this offseason, along with a couple others, one of which I work with closely in a different form of motorsports. Where people made a decision that a paper contract wasn't good enough anymore because they don't care.
Right.
But this opportunity with Blue Emu and the effort that Landon has put in.
Oh yeah.
It continues to show partners out there globally that Landon Castle brings what you need.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, and Landon's a great example. I mean, he's been a long time proponent of what iRacing does. I mean, he was an early adapter way back when. He and Parker Kligerman, both those guys, they kind of saw what we wanted to do. And they've been kind of advocates of ours from the very beginning. Is quite frankly, same with Dale Jr. I mean, Dale's been a gamer for years, right?
Yeah.
And he loves sim racing. And Dale has been there from the very beginning, going, if you haven't tried this out, you should. And that goes beyond just, I don't want to scare the novice or the beginner away, because we're talking about all these big name, racer guys, right? You can be a beginner and quite frankly, awful like myself, right? And hop in and have fun, because the iRacing service will pair you against like-skilled people, right? So you don't have to think that, oh, great, I'm going to be, racing against Landon Castle or Dale Jr. or Swindell. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you don't have to worry about, you may see him in a race if it doesn't split up. Don't get me wrong. You can see those guys online, but it's a service for all, that want that competition, like that real world motorsport feel, and want to have fun. And like you're doing, I mean, guys will start their own leagues where you have 5, 10, 15, 20 guys that'll race each other every Tuesday night, right? And maybe it's for money, maybe it's just for bragging rights, so you can talk crap about the guy the following day, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And so there's that fun aspect of it, but then there's that serious aspect too. I mean, some guys will just use it for training. I mean, the way that we create content, it's millimeter accurate, right? So those tracks, the way that you see it, that's how it was exactly when we scanned it, right? So the bumps, the dips, the off-camber stuff, that's all the visual cues. It's all in there. And this is from NASCAR to IndyCar to Formula One stuff to GT3, GTE cars. Now we have dirt, so we got the World of Outlaws.
And on that note,
we got the off-road trucks. We got it keeps growing.
You think back to this year, and we're sitting there in Tulsa, and there's the racing in 1 and 2 at the Chili Bowl, just like something felt off. Everybody felt something was off.
Yeah.
Somebody got on a phone. Somebody found out the exact dimensions that you guys scanned the track at.
Right.
They spent the entire night recutting turns 1 and 2, and bingo, bango, turn 1 and 2 is awesome racing again.
There it is. And you know what? And a lot of that goes back to, a lot of guys know that, Tony Stewart, spends an amazing amount of time prepping that, right? Getting that course ready. And Tony's been a long time iRacer as well, so he gets it. And he knows, he goes, what those guys create, it's spot on. So yeah, it turned out that what was that, turn 3 and 4, or was that 1 and 2?
I think it was 1 and 2. I thought
1 and 2. It was 1 and 2. Was literally 2 feet narrower, right? And so they went back to the scan data, looked at everything, and like, oh wow, yeah, let's do this, and it fixed it right away. So again, I think the industry has definitely found that iRacing is a pretty valuable tool on multiple levels. And that's very exciting for us. I mean, that's always what we want it to be. We want it to kind of weave ourselves into that fabric of motorsports, so where we're not just this, oh yeah, it's a cool game over here, and you hop on it. It's much more than that. And I think over the last 10 plus years, we've kind of proven that. And it's exciting times. It's been exciting times, and it's even more exciting now that I think we've elevated what we do, not only technology-wise, but just I think more people know about us now. And so I think because of that, the exposure that this pandemic has afforded us, and again, all very tragic, but again, we've positioned ourselves to where we really benefited from the exposure, and hopefully that will continue long after guys are back on the real track.
So what's next? I mean, what does iRacing do next to just continue to build and step up?
Well, we're always working on it. So like a lot of games or sims or software, you buy the software, it's done, right? So we are constantly upgrading what we do. So 4 times a year, we do these builds that either add content or they improve on something that we already have in the software, or new functionality, right? So we just recently added dirt, a few years ago. We added heat functionality. We're always aiming towards getting the sim to be a more accurate representation of what it is real world. We're still tweaking our tire model. I mean, that's the hardest part of the sim, is to get that tire model correct. And I mean, Dave Kemmer, who is literally the founder of sim racing, I mean, he's been working on that nonstop for I don't know how many years, and he keeps tweaking on it, keeps getting better, better, and better. Track surface, how the tire reacts with track surface and dirt. I mean, the whole dynamic track surface where the track slicks off and the cushion moves up and the moisture comes out of the track and how that affects things. We're always improving that. We just added Pro 4 and Pro 2 trucks, off-road trucks, right? So we're going to be adding more content there as well. We'll be doing more of these type of championship races where you get guys, real world and sim racers, that have the opportunity to be on that global stage. So I know I haven't given away any secrets of what's next, which and I'll leave that fun stuff to Steve and Tony, right? But there's a lot of cool things in the pipeline that are short-term project and then long-term projects on where we want to see the simulation. We just recently added AI, right? So people are like, why did that take so long? Games have had AI for 1,000 years. Hell, we had it in the old papyrus games, right? But I think once you've tried the AI in iRacing, you'll see its next level stuff.
I haven't tried it yet, but when all my friends go back to work, I'm going to be left with nothing else.
Yeah, right, exactly. You'll want those self-starting pickup races, right? But you'll see the way the cars react and race you. It's really next level stuff that really no one's doing. And again, that's always been what iRacing is about. We want to create the most authentic experience, whether that's for the newbie or the seasoned racer. And you'll hear seasoned guys go, well, it doesn't feel right to me. It doesn't. And the main reason that isn't because the sim isn't right. It's because you lack that seat of the pants feel, right? So you don't feel the car kind of yawing out unless you have a full motion rig, right? So you're basically, all your senses are your feeling that you're getting from the steering wheel and your visual cues. And there's some sound in there as well. It's say, okay, I'm pushing those tires to the limit. I'm starting to kind of, get a little loose, or I'm getting pushy or whatever. So you rely more on those other senses. And that's why the young kids that start virtually and go to real world pick up real world much quicker because there's way more sensory input, right? So they're more successful out of the box, where the old school guy that has never done the sim stuff, he comes into the sim environment and it's a little bit numb for him, right? You don't have that sense of speed of the air, rushing past your face, or feeling a car on the inside or outside of you, right? So you're kind of having to adjust yourself to that. So typically, if you hear some real world racer say, well, it doesn't feel right, it's because they're not used to that lack of sensory inputs that you would get when sitting in a real car. Short of that, we have vehicle dynamic engineers that build these cars. We get guys from the NASCAR Cup garages, IndyCar, sports car, F1, building our cars. They're not these like slidable scales from 1 to 10. These guys are literally building these cars virtually from the ground up. And so when we're done, and you put them on these millimeter accurate racetracks, the experience is authentic. Yeah. And at the end of the day, that's what we're going for, is that authenticity.
Well, this is going to be fun for me because this is the final question. It's the same for everybody, every week, every guest. As a race fan, as a person in motorsports, if you had to pick one car, you had to pick one track, and you had to pick two drivers to race heads up against each other, who would you pick, and what would they be in, and where would they be at?
I'm such a fan of short track racing, right? So people, will probably expect, it's Nürburgring or Spa and the GT3 car. For me, I'd want to bring it down to grassroots and like pick something that I'm very familiar with, like maybe like a Thompson in a street stock, and you pair up like Junior and maybe like Lando Norris or someone. So someone from the F1 side of things, old school, new school, going back, short track racing. Probably not the answer you were expecting, but
it's doable.
Yeah. And to me, that'd be exciting.
It's
I love
doable.
the beating bang on the short track. Yeah, absolutely.
Man, I might have to get on this one now. I might have to try and send some texts.
Absolutely. Let's make it
awesome,
happen.
man. Well, Otto, thank you so much for joining us. Obviously, everybody at home, thank you for tuning in here. Episode 2 of the Wheelhouse on SpeedLab TV. For Chris Wheeler, Otto Szebeni, and of course, Chris Blair from Worldwide Technology Raceway. I want to thank everybody for tuning in, and we can't wait to see you next week.